What is the perfect computer to use in cybersecurity? Stick around for this video and I will walk you through some of the things that you need to consider when you're looking for a computer and how you can get the best computer for your cybersecurity journey. But first, if this is the first time that we're meeting, hello, my name is John Good, and this is my channel where I get to spread my passion for cybersecurity training, tips and tricks, and career advice to help you go further. Remember to smash the thumbs up to like this video, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss future content, and make sure to leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. If you like this video or any of my other training videos, make sure you head on over to my website at johngood.com where I have a lot more training and full courses for you. If you just want to donate to support the channel, that's cool. There's a link in the description where you can do that. Also, make sure to join me on my growing Discord server. The link is in the description. All right, let's get into the video. First and foremost, when you're looking at the perfect computer for cybersecurity, the most important thing that you need to consider is that you are comfortable with the computer that you're using. You don't want to get some computer that is completely outside of your comfort zone. For instance, if you're extremely used to Windows computers, you don't really need to get a Mac computer just to be different. You can stick with what you're comfortable with as long as you can get the job done. That's the most important part. So why is a computer for cybersecurity so important? Well, let's face it, in cybersecurity, a lot of the tools that we use and the things that we do, if we perform them on networks that we are not allowed or permitted to perform them on, they are actually illegal. And if you're doing things that you've never done before, you could actually take down an entire network because you don't actually know what is going to happen when you launch that tool, when you launch that script. So it's extremely important that you have some kind of a home lab or some kind of computer system set up that allows you to test a lot of these tools and practice and hone your skills. Deciding on a home lab or a computer, though, can be confusing because you're not always necessarily thinking about the future and what some of these pieces of software or these tools are actually going to require in order for you to actually perform some of these practice tests. So that's the purpose of this video. We're going to walk through some of the important things that you need to consider when you're looking for a computer, and that will help you get a solid home lab environment as well. So let's begin. The very first thing that you need to consider is your budget. What is your budget? So ask yourself that question. I'm not saying that labs are extremely pricey, but knowing your budget is definitely going to impact which products or which parts that you choose. If you get to the very end and you have, let's say, this $10,000 build, but you can only spend $1,000, that doesn't do you any good. You're going to have top of the line parts, but you can't actually afford the computer. So you need to know what your budget is so you can be economical and you can make sure that you pick parts that fit within that budget. Now, the second thing that you need to decide is desktop versus laptop. So this comes down to the ability to be mobile. Where are you going to need your computer? Are you in college or in school and you need to take your computer with you to class? You need to take it with you to work or any kind of conference or something like that. Can you just leave the computer at home? Those are some important questions that you need to answer because that also impacts which kind of computer that you can actually go with. For some people, it really doesn't matter what kind of computer that they have, if they have a desktop or a laptop, because they're basically going to be doing the same things. And some people like to have a laptop, but they keep their computer at home. Some people they prefer a desktop. Now, I will say this too. With a desktop, it is a lot easier to upgrade parts in the future. So you have that future-proof ability. With the exception, of course, if you go with a Mac computer, you can't do a lot of upgrading with the Mac. You have to do it, initially when you first get the computer, when it's being built. And that's kind of the same with a lot of the other laptops, even though some you can do things like changing RAM. So you can upgrade the RAM. But as far as like processors and things like that, you're basically going to be set with what you get on a laptop. Whereas if you have a desktop, every year if you wanted to, every 6 months, whatever. You could upgrade all of your parts. You definitely want to take that into consideration if you think you're going to be expanding your computer or you want to be able to upgrade things without having to get a brand new computer. The next question is, do you want to build it or do you want to buy it? I would follow up that question as well with, how much time do you have on your hands? So how much time can you commit to building a computer? Computers take some time to build. It's just how it is. You have to do things like wire management or cable management and attaching your cooling supply and all these different things that just take time to do. Now, if you're a beginner, I generally don't like recommending beginners build their computers. Now, here's why. If you're a beginner, there are a lot of components that go into a computer. Let's say you decide to just pick all the different parts to build it up. If you pick parts that aren't compatible, that's going to be definitely not helpful because you're going to have to change the parts and get correct and compatible parts. But also, too, you're going to have to figure out how all this stuff goes together. And honestly, that can lead to some frustration. When you're learning, especially early on, you do not want to introduce extra frustration. That can just lead to a lot of issues, and that can honestly set you back from just wanting to continue to learn. You can just start making excuses because you're so frustrated that you just don't want to deal with it. You want to shut it out. So with beginners, I would generally not recommend building your own computer. Now, on the flip side of that, if you do build your own computer, you can save money if you do it right. You can build a very powerful computer and you can save money on parts, because what happens is if you go to, let's say, Dell or whoever, and you buy a computer from them, they're going to charge you markup because somebody has to assemble the computer, right? So they're going to charge you labor. And if you're just buying the parts and putting them together, or you buy a kit and you put it together, you're going to save on that labor cost because you're going to do it. So it's still going to take some time to do, but you're not going to have to pay somebody else for that labor. Now, I'm going to bring up a website here. This is called PC Part Picker, okay? And with this website, if you're planning on building your computer, this is an awesome website. You can go in here and go to System Builder, and you can actually go through and pick all of the different parts, and it will make sure that they're compatible for you. So you go in here and we'll just pick this first one and hit add. And so you just go all the way through here and you can see where the parts come from. This one's from Amazon and you can get shipping with Prime. So that's cool. It tells you the price and everything. And it will actually make sure that you get compatible parts. Okay. So let's see if we do a motherboard. That one. Yep. So it's only going to let you pick compatible parts, which is awesome. So you shouldn't really run into any issues if you use this website. And definitely if you're building a computer, it's a good idea to look at this website and just make sure. Obviously with computer parts, you can go to the individual specs and you can actually determine what is going to be compatible and what won't be. But this is just an easy way where you can put the whole computer basically together without having to go into each individual part into the specs and find out if they're compatible. Now, if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure that you smash the thumbs up to like this video. And if you have questions so far, go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below. I want to point out that all the information in this video is available in my free ebook, Guide to Cybersecurity Careers, which all you have to do in order to get a free copy is go to the link in the description, sign up for my newsletter, and you'll be directed where you can download it immediately. My ebook also has information on certifications, education, soft skills that you need in cybersecurity, and a whole bunch of other stuff to make sure that you are ready for a career in cybersecurity. So definitely check it out. Go sign up for my newsletter, and again, you'll get a link to directly download it right away. All right, let's get back into the content. Now, components is the next thing that we're going to cover. Let's start out with processor. Now, in the past, dual core processors and some of these lower level processors core possible to get. If you have the option, don't get a dual core processor. Get at least a quad core processor. Now, I had a MacBook several years ago. It was about in 2015. It was a 13-inch MacBook, and it was a dual core processor. It worked great for general use, but the problem is in cybersecurity, we deal with a lot of virtual machines and we do a lot of our practice in virtual machines. And what I found was that once I started to try and do like 2 virtual machines, it would start being extremely loud. It would start to slow down at times. And that's just because of that processor. It's not meant to have a whole bunch of virtual machines running. So get at least a quad core processor when you're looking at computers. As far as RAM, I would not get anything less than 16 gigabytes, honestly. It's kind of the same thing with the processor, that the more virtual machines that you run, the more RAM and resources that you're going to need. When you're running virtual machines, you're going to want to dedicate generally about 4 gigabytes per virtual machine. So if you're running 2 and you only have 8 gigabytes total, your whole computer is going to slow down. It's just not going to be a fun time. And especially if you start running Windows virtual machines, Windows in general is a very resource heavy requiring operating system. So definitely when you're running Windows, you're going to have to do, 4 gigabytes at least, especially if it's using the GUI and all the interfaces. 16 gigabytes is the minimum that I would get. If you get a desktop, you can actually get up to 32, 64, and even higher very easily. I have a couple computers that one has 32 gigabytes of RAM, and then one has 72 gigabytes of RAM. And I'll show you one of those later so you can kind of see what one of those computers looks like. But definitely more RAM is better, for sure. As far as internal storage or hard drive space, don't get anything less than 500 gigabytes. All those virtual machines and tools and even things that you do outside of cybersecurity, if you're using your machine for personal use as well, all that stuff is going to take memory. And if you get less than 500 gigabytes, you're going to eat it up pretty quick. 1 terabyte would be ideal, 1 terabyte or more, but 500 gigabytes is a good minimum requirement for hard drive space. I would also get a solid state drive because it's going to be more reliable and it's going to be faster than a regular hard drive. Now let's talk about the operating system. If you're going to use Windows, I would highly suggest you use Windows Professional. There are features that you get in the professional version that you don't get in the regular home version. So I would highly, highly recommend that you get the professional version of Windows. If you get a Mac computer, you're obviously going to be using Mac OS, and that's just the only option really. I don't like recommending Linux for beginners. It's kind of similar to what I was talking about with building a computer for beginners. Linux requires a lot of tinkering with settings and configurations. You can do a lot of the same kind of stuff, but you don't want that host operating system, which is basically your base operating system that your computer runs on. You don't want that operating system to cause a lot of issues for you. You want that to be very stable and just work. Okay? So definitely I would steer you either towards Windows or Mac OS if you get an Apple computer. And then virtualization software. Remember when I was talking about virtual machines and running a lot of these different ones on our computers with Windows and Linux and all these different operating systems? Well, there are 3 major players when it comes to virtualization software. There is VirtualBox, which is free. Okay, it's kind of your standard free software. You have Hyper-V, and that's a pretty good option as well. It's not something that you would go out and buy. It comes with Windows. And there is VMware. Now, the one that I would recommend is VMware, and I would get VMware Pro. VMware is not free, unfortunately, but here's why I would recommend that. Some of the virtual machines that you will get will come from other people, or they will come from these sites that we have in cybersecurity that are practice kind of virtual machines. And you download the virtual machine and you spin it up on your computer. but a lot of those are made with VMware. Personally, I've used some of the other ones like VirtualBox, and Parallels was another one that I used to use. And what I found was a lot of these virtual machines, I would run into issues with these other softwares. With VMware, because they are made with VMware, I never had any issues when I used that. You also do get some other cool features, such as being able to share VMs and things like that across the network. But VMware is the best virtualization software that you can get. And I would get VMware Workstation Player Pro. Now, I went through and I researched some computers to show you, just to give you kind of an idea of different price ranges of good solid builds. And these are a lot of pre-built computers, but it's to give you kind of an idea of different ones that you can do. And of course, every one of these, I will have the link in the description as well. So if you like them, you want to check them out, definitely check those links out that I've put down below. So the first one that I brought up here is a MacBook Pro. Okay. I've had a couple MacBook Pros in the past, and they are awesome. They do a great job of really just working. Some people don't necessarily like to be in that Apple ecosystem, but honestly, Mac computers, they just work. You do typically tend to pay a little bit more, of course. Now, this is over $2,000 for this one, but I mean, you get a really solid computer. So with this particular one, you get 16 gig of RAM, 16-inch screen, and then 512 gigabyte hard drive. So you get some good specs. And of course, the Mac screens are amazing. I would not go with the smaller version of the Mac if you're going to go Mac. So right now, the 13-inch is the smaller version. What happens is those smaller versions, they tend to be underpowered compared to the bigger ones, the bigger screen ones. And I've had both. I had a 15-inch and a 13-inch. With my 13-inch I actually had a dual core, and it was fine for one virtual machine. But once I started to try to run a couple, it just was not having it. It would start getting loud, and I just would have issues. The 15-inch was great for a long time. So I would definitely go with the 16-inch if you're going to go Mac. The second one here is this Republic of Gamers computer here. And the thing I like about this, again, you have a good sized screen. Okay. You also have a Core i7, an Intel Core i7, which is really good. 16 gig of RAM. Awesome. You have a really big SSD hard drive, so 1 terabyte. That's great. The one thing I don't like about this is this right here, Windows 10 Home Edition. Now, is that a deal breaker? Not necessarily, and you probably won't end up upgrading the operating system because you're going to spend about $2,000 on the computer. You could, and if you're a student, a lot of times they have deals for students, which can be helpful. At that price point, you may or may not upgrade the operating system. But other than that, it's a great computer. Looks awesome. The next computer is this MSI computer. Again, a 15.6-inch screen. You have a Core i7, which is awesome. 16 gigs of RAM, and then a 512 gigabyte SSD. All around, really good deal. And it's for $1,000. That's a really solid buy for $1,000 for sure. This particular computer, I don't know a whole bunch about. It's the convertible laptop from Acer, but I do know that a lot of people are getting computers like this. So you have the Microsoft Surface, which I've seen a lot, and they're really useful if you're going to do things like presentations or really just if you need to write on it, because it does have this stylus here. So you have that ability where you can just write on the screen, which is actually really useful for a lot of different things. You get a little bit smaller screen. So this is a 14-inch screen, 16 gig of RAM, awesome Core i7. Oh, cover that up. A 512 gigabyte of hard drive of SSD. Really good looking computer as well. Only $800. So, you get a little bit less cost, which is really nice. On this one, you'll notice that it's a gaming computer. Now, this was considered an entry-level gaming computer. And you'll notice that some of these are gaming computers that I've had on here. And the reason for that is because they just have a lot of good parts You don't get weird configurations with gaming computers. They're usually spec'd out pretty good, meaning they're good components, they're good parts that work together. But on this particular one, this is a desktop computer. So you do only get a Core i5. So you get a little bit less processor. You get 8 gig of RAM, which again, with desktop computers, you can upgrade a lot of these parts. So it's really not that big of a deal, especially when you're under $750, right? You also get 2 hard drives in here. You get a 240 gig SSD and a terabyte hard drive. Now that's a common configuration with a lot of different computers. What people will do is they will install their operating system on that SSD, that solid state drive, because it will run a lot faster, and then they'll store all their files on that additional hard drive. So it's a performance measure that can really help you out. Now, something I don't like, again, Windows 10 Home, but at this price, honestly, you could upgrade your operating system and it's not that big of a deal. Again, if you're a student, look for deals. In general, look for deals on operating systems. But really, I mean, this is not a bad priced computer. It's a desktop, so you have to be okay with that, but really good looking computer. Now, this last one, the reason why I bring up this Dell Precision T5500 is because these computers are great if you want to use it as solely to serve up things like virtual machines. Now, maybe you have a computer already and you don't want to replace it, but you need some kind of home lab. This is a great option because you can get a computer like this and then you can just put all your virtual machines on there. These computers tend to get the ability to do a lot with virtual machines. They have a lot of RAM that you can put in there. So this particular one has 64 gigabytes of RAM. You can get more on these computers and you just get a lot of overall processing power. What you can do is you can load your virtual machines on this and then remote into this computer. This is running Windows 10 Pro. So when you have all your virtual machines on there, you can just remote into that computer. Works great. I actually have one of those computers that I can do that with as well. Now the 5500 is an older version. They do have newer models that you can get as well. So, faster computer and all that good stuff. But even this one works out pretty well. One thing that I'll point out, this comes with 2 hard drives. Okay. Now, personally, I'm not a huge fan of using hard drives that come with a computer like this because this is a used computer, but it's only $700. But with the hard drives that come with it, what can happen is if somebody loads that up with malware and they send it to you, and then you just start using it, you're going to introduce a lot of issues. So personally, I like to buy other hard drives and operating systems and then install it when I get the actual computer. It ends up being a little bit more expensive, takes a little bit more time, but it's a little bit safer to do. And a lot of people will take those hard drives that come with the computers like this. And because you work in cybersecurity, you can run some forensics and do some awesome, cool stuff while you're playing around with those hard drives. So that would be what I would do. I wouldn't use those hard drives that come with it. I would go ahead and get some additional hard drives, and then I would install an operating system on top of those other hard drives and just run some forensics and things like that. Play around with those hard drives that come with it. But again, on the desktops, it's very easy to upgrade parts. On laptops, it's going to be a lot harder. Now, I'm going to put the links for all of those computers down in the description below so that if you're interested in those computers or you want to check them out more, that you can go to those links. So make sure to check the description for that. Now, question of the day. After all of that, are you going to build it or are you going to buy it? Let me know down in the comments. Remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Head on over to my website at johngood.com for full training courses. If you like this information and you want to see more about cybersecurity careers, head to my website and sign up for my newsletter, and you'll get a free copy of my ebook that has a lot more information than this on cybersecurity careers. And I'll see you next time.